Hey, Dr. Vance coming to you from Delhi, India, one of our last stops on our way before we head back home. And when your audience is done, you're done. That's kind of what I want to deal with this last couple of weeks. I've been doing some teaching, and I had a chance to teach with a group of kids. Normally I don't teach kids, but this was one of those things where you just step in and you do what you got to do. And so I had a group of kids that were younger than I normally deal with. And as a result, because the weather was so extremely hot, and because there were no fans, there was no air conditioning or anything like that, I had an opportunity to use each one of these techniques in order to regain my audience, because I continued to lose them on a regular basis, as you can imagine. Probably 95% humidity, and the temperatures ranged probably in the range of, over 100, maybe in the high 90s. And so anyway, as I was teaching, and you see that you're losing your audience, there are a number of techniques that you can actually use in order to be able to break into or back into where your audience is. And let's see, I think I'm going down the wrong alley here, so I think I'm going to go back. But there are a number of things that you can do to regain your audience. And I had to use every single one of these, and I'm going to give you 4. And the 4th one is the one that you use in last resort. So the first one is simply asking for a show of hands. If you're teaching and you want people to respond, you ask them to give you a show of hands. Hey, how many of you have? And that worked, but that's one of those ones that doesn't work as powerfully as it could. And so then the second thing that you can always use, and this is much more powerful, and that is to interact with the audience. And I use this, especially with the kids, I use this an awful lot. I would walk down into the audience and begin to talk with individuals within the audience. And it was a fairly large group of kids, but sometimes I'd walk to the first couple of rows, sometimes I'd walk all the way back to the back rows of the audience and talk to them directly. Sometimes I'd even squat down and talk to some of the kids. And even though I was talking with or through an interpreter, that still shut down the extra conversation in the room and all of the noise and everything that was happening. It shut it down and allowed me to be able to go on for at least another 4, 5, 7, 8 minutes before I had to regain their attention one more time. So that's the second thing that you can use. The third thing that you can use, and it's extremely powerful, and that is to tell a story. So in other words, lots of times in our teaching, we like to simply just list points. Now with kids, you just don't have that extravagance just to simply tell what they should be learning. The way that kids learn, the way that everybody learns the best, but especially kids, is through story. So if you get to one of those places in your teaching where you have literally lost your audience, and you can see they're wandering off, you can see their attention is going, and there's chatter in the audience, or they're looking down, or whatever it happens to be, everything that you would actually do if you got bored with listening to a speaker, well, then you can simply tell a story. Now, if you don't have a story in your presentation at that particular moment, you can certainly, wow, that one was noisy. You can certainly develop a story as you go on. All you have to do is think of a story that illustrates the point that you're trying to make. And instead of making the point, tell the story. All right, the very last thing. So that's 3 techniques you can use. First, show of hands. Second of all, walk down and interact with the audience. And the third thing, tell a story. Now, the 4th thing is the thing that you use when you've used all 3 of those things and they've either failed or you've used them all a couple of times and you realize that your audience is just not going to hang on. And I had to actually use this on the 3rd day of kids camp. We got to a place where we'd been teaching. Kids were exhausted. Frankly, we were exhausted. I was sweating like you can't believe because it was so hot. And, so I got about half of the way through my presentation, and I started looking at the kids, and I pulled out all of these things that I normally pull out from my bag of how to get kids involved. And I realized none of them would continue to work. I couldn't use them a second or a third time. And so I simply did the fourth thing, the fourth trick, and that is you cut to the close and you just end. And everybody goes, hey, didn't you have more to say? And yeah, you had more to say, but guess what? Nobody is going to hear your more to say. They just aren't. It doesn't matter how many clues, doesn't matter how good you are, doesn't matter how loud you talk, doesn't matter any of those things. They're just not going to hear it. And if they're not going to hear it, why say it? So just cut to your close, offer a closing prayer, and you're done. And that's the best way you can be an impactful speaker. All right, so those are 4 techniques to use if you happen to gain or happen to be in an audience where you are literally losing your audience, or your audience is just exhausted, or they're tired, or they're whatever it happens to be. If you're in that position, those are 4 things you can do to gain and regain your audience. And as I said, if you've used all 3, or if you just get in a place where you realize you're at an end, use the 4th one, cut to a close. Have a great day.